Welcome back to the For Purpose Podcast. My name is Jayden Boyce. Alongside me is John Hinzman, and every middle schooler's favorite history teacher and a Hall of Fame St. Croix Central wrestling coach, Brad Holzer, is in the building. How you doing today, Brad?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for having me. It's gonna be a fun time, I think.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, John, we've been gone for a while. We took a very long break after the national championship game. We're gonna do a podcast. You got super sick. I come back a week later to do another one. I got super sick, so it's been like 2 months.
Well, the championship game was January 20th, so what is today? March 14th, 13th, 14th? Yeah,
almost been 2 months. We're back in it, back in the saddle, though. And you've listened to a lot of our podcasts, have you not, Brad?
Yep.
You usually start out with talking about, John, you usually ask the first question. You go with
Yeah, just tell us about your background, where you're from, where you grew up, and kind of that, what gave you the basis of who you are?
Well, Hammond, born and raised, so I haven't really ventured real far. My family's been in Hammond a long time. So elementary, middle school, high school, actually not middle school, junior high at the time, because we're old school.
Right.
So went through St. Croix Central, ended up going to Winona State University to get my undergrad in elementary ed, and ends up get out of there and go down to Durand for a couple of years, and got a call from, of all people, Pete Newsbaum and Gary Reinick, and said, "Hey, we got a job opening at St. Croix Central. You're coming home." It wasn't really a, "Hey, we have an opening." I think it was more of a, "You have to come home."
So the Central way.
Yeah, in the Central way. And been there since 2001. Sort of the rest is history. It's been a long ride. When you've been in St. Croix Central School District since 1980, basically.
Right.
I've seen a lot of change, a lot of growth. So it's been quite a journey.
Wait, so then back in high school, then you wrestled back in high school, big time wrestler. Did you wrestle in college then or not?
I did not. I sort of one of those things that I think led me to coaching, because I got done with my high school and just it didn't end the way I wanted it to end. I was down at the state tournament my senior year, didn't go the way I wanted it to, and really wanted nothing to do with wrestling the rest of my senior year, and sort of picked Winona State because it didn't have wrestling, which is sort of weird. But then that winter rolled around my freshman year, and I was like, hold it, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be wrestling right now. It's something, you've been doing since 1980, since I was 5 years old, and all of a sudden you're not doing it anymore. So that sort of got my drive back, get back in the room a little bit. I helped out in a couple schools in Winona throughout college, and, I said, I'm going to coach. If I can't wrestle, I'm going to coach. That's really 27 years of coaching, and then those couple of years in college. So, 30 plus years in a wrestling room has been really fun.
We do have to say happy birthday. It was his Holzer's birthday just was it Saturday?
A big 5-0.
March 11th. I'm officially old. The gray is officially kicked in.
That gray's coming in well, right?
It is. It's coming in well. The last couple of years, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's me being old or the kids that I coach. I don't know which ones.
So you were in Durand for a couple of years. Did you coach there as well?
Yep. So that's sort of, the Central way there again, too. I graduated from college, and Lindy Johnson, my head coach in high school, said, "Hey, if you want to coach, there's an opening in Durand. I could put a good word in for you." And I didn't know what I was getting into. I'm 23 years old and show up, and I'm officially the assistant coach, but I'm running practices and doing everything. And let's just say it was a learning experience, because I didn't know anything. I didn't wrestle in college. I'd been somewhat out of the room for a while, and all of a sudden you're thrust into practice plans and setting up stuff, bus times and all that kind of stuff. So I was sort of thrown to the wolves, and, if I could go back and do a lot of things differently, I probably would those first couple of years, as most coaches would, but it was really just trial by fire.
Now, Durand was in the middle border at that time.
Yes.
So, but Central was in the Dun St. Croix.
Yep.
So Durand was actually a bigger school than Central was.
Yeah, they've sort of flip-flopped. So when I was in Durand, we were middle border. Middle border, probably one of the toughest conferences still at that time in wrestling. So, I'm going up against Hall of Fame coaches like Jack Radabaugh, and you got Walquist from Baldwin, and you got Henry Yetter and Amory, and here I am 23. I don't know nothing about nothing, and I'm sitting in seeding meetings listening to these guys fight with each other about seeds. I just sit back and I'm quiet. I don't know what to do. And like I said, it was learning. A lot of learning.
So then once you got to Central, then then were you head coach right away, or were you still an assistant for a little while?
Nope. When I got back in 01, Pete Newsbaum was the head coach. I took over. I was the assistant. Pete was there 1 year, and that's when he went back and started working on his principalship and stuff like that. So 01, 2000, or 01, 02, I was the assistant, and then I took over head coach.
So then what did you see the difference between Central and Durand, you'd say?
Durand was very, very heavily basketball oriented, and just always have been. I had some good kids down there. Youth program was a little harder getting. I had some very, very good people helping me out down there, but they were few and far between. So when I come back to Central, there's much more of a community built around wrestling. Makes things a lot easier. Obviously, you have people that are willing to help, people willing to put time in, people that are willing to help coach, set up stuff for tournaments. So it just made things a lot easier.
And now it's flipped. You just had a youth wrestling tournament last weekend, right? Second through
kindergarten through 6th grade.
Okay. And you had how many kids there at that?
We had 125 kids wrestle at it. That's area schools too. But, I get to with the help. I mean, we had parents of kids that graduated. We had parents of kids that were out there wrestling, helping out. We had, it's just a whole community that comes out to support that, which is what you need in a small town.
Right. And I know Jayden touched us a little bit. So, in your 27 years now, you're like, okay, you first time coming to college, and you and I have ran the weight room together quite a bit, and we've had a lot of these conversations, but, you look at kids 27 years ago versus now, what do you see, the change as far as you first coming to college, like, okay, I'm sure you didn't, maybe Durand did have a weight room, maybe they did have a program, but what was that like when you first come out of college to be like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah, Durand had a weight room. It was probably like Central's was before the remodel.
Sure.
Not real big. And the kids did lift pretty good, but you're talking, most of my kids were just farm kids.
Right.
Wasn't worked, and they were just strong to begin with. Get back to Central, obviously the weight room is a huge part of what we do. I think of the big changes that I see coming through is just the year-round training. You have kids that they come into the sport, and you don't have to get in shape to do your sport. They're already in shape. So now it's just focus on, technique, focus on the things you need to do. And that wasn't the case. Definitely when I was in high school, we weren't working out year round.
Right.
You'd work hard during the season, but then once the season was over, you moved on to the next thing.
Right. Because your seasons were similar. You and I are about the same age. They were very defined.
Yep.
Like football's this, basketball, wrestling's this, and then your spring sport, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids we have coming up right now in our wrestling program, especially I'd say the group that is 4th grade to about sophomores, they've put a lot of time in on the mat where we have, that's very different than what we've had in the past. It's more, I won't say year round, but a good 6 months, good 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows with the product that we put on the mat right now, where when I was in school, I didn't wrestle freestyle till after my sophomore year. And we got kids, doing that in elementary school now. And, there's positives and negatives with the amount of training kids do. But, I think as long as it's done right and you have the right focus, keep training, keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
Well, I think what's crazy is, from like Elmwood, like in middle school and stuff, like wrestling, not heard of around here, is it, John? Like no one talks about wrestling, no one knows anything. So I go to St. Grace Central my freshman year. I see all these guys just going crazy about wrestling. I was like, what is this? I didn't know how big it's huge. You talked about community, the difference between Durand and Central. The community at wrestling, I always tell my friends, it's like a cult. These guys crazy, we're going to go to Victory today, this and that. Explain how, has it always been like that through Central, or just more of a recent development with how serious kids have been taking wrestling?
I think it's always been that way. I think you have, in a cult is probably the right word for it, because anybody that's willing to sit in a gym on a Saturday for 8 hours and watch your kid wrestle 3 or 4 matches, you have to have something a little off about you. but that's just sort of the way it is. That's the nature of the beast with wrestling. And a lot of times it's generational. I think of just myself. My dad wrestled for St. Croix Central. I did. My kids did. The amount of kids that we have in the program right now who have an older brother, even an older sister in some cases, a parent that wrestled, and it doesn't just have to be at Central, but anywhere. And you understand what it takes to be good, that ground and pound and just getting your butt kicked quite often, where not a lot of people want to do that. And, when I was in school, we had a good core group of kids that were 2 years older than me, and then my grade, and then 2 years younger than me. So it was sort of like every other year, which was a little bit weird, but that's just sort of the way it worked out. And, I think many of those guys are still my best friends today at 50. Right. Guys 2 years older than me, guys 2 years younger than me. We just, I think being in that practice room with each other and just beating the living crap out of each other for 3 months, for 4 years in a row, you just grow on each other.
Well, I don't get like how Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, all these guys going to practice all the time. They have to watch what they eat all the time. I genuinely don't know how y'all do it. Like you said, like something's got to be off with you wrestling.
Yeah, it's a lot of sacrifice. I think, that they have this expression, if once you wrestled, everything else in life is easy. Obviously there's things in life that are hard. And wrestling does help you with those things. But I think when you look at your average high school athlete, what a wrestler has to go through versus other athletes, because other sports are just as tough. There's a mental aspect to it. You get your butts kicked in practice, you work hard. But in wrestling, you throw on I got to make weight. I got to go over Thanksgiving. I got to go over Christmas breaks, like you just said. You're wrestling every day for your spot, basically, because, it's probably one of the truest sports, if it's done right, where you just have wrestle-offs. The best person's going to be the guy in the starting lineup. So you're always looking over your back because that person that, your practice partner is getting better every day too with you. So it's that, I think more than anything, that mental piece, and it really shows freshman year where kids come in and they've maybe been a really, really good wrestler. And by about February 1st, it starts to wear on them a little bit, where you just have, it's a long season. That mental aspect of getting up for matches can get really hard when you're talking 30 to 40 matches. And some of our really good kids might have wrestled 30 matches in middle school a year, but 20 of them were, basically cupcake matches. Now you're getting up every weekend for somebody really good.
Yeah, there's 2 words that you mentioned, and I want to come back to both of them. One is discipline, the other one's mentality. Because I think you really need both, probably equally as a wrestler. We talk a lot about all the time is like, how do you form discipline? How do you form mentality? So you talk about discipline as a wrestler. Let's start there. So what is a season like when you start off in November, correct?
Yep.
Start in November. Your freshman year, whatever, sophomore year, what does that discipline look like for a boy or a girl who's coming in the wrestling room? What is it? How do you coach that, or what's that sound like, feel like, that discipline moment for them?
Well, I think a lot for us starts in middle school, honestly, with the coaches we have. That's one thing I've always tried to do is my ego is pretty small when it comes to the sport. I want good people around me. It's not me coaching. I have head coach in my title. But it's a whole community of coaches. Our middle school right now, between Derek Miller, Stave, Grandpa Mark Delander, Noah Newsbaum's in there now, and a couple others. They start that mentality of, hey, we are going to work really hard, and we're going to beat kids at the end of the year that beat us at the beginning of it. That's the mentality that we have. So they come into practice and they work hard, and they get yelled at, which is not common in today's world. There's probably some things that, get beat up a little bit. Sometimes there's tears. Actually, there's a lot of times there's tears, and they survive. And then they get to their 8th grade, it gets easier. Then they come into the freshman year, and that expectation is already there. Like, they know what a practice is going to be like. Now you add in the morning workouts, and that's something that we switched a couple years ago that I think has really helped us out. So, it used to be a 2 hour, 15-minute practice at night, because you'd get your practice in the room, get your conditioning, then go lift weights. Well, we switched that around, do our morning workouts for an hour. Now we're at, practice an hour after school. Right. So kids are getting done at 4:45, 5 o'clock at the latest. So it gives them an evening still. But that getting up in the morning, you go back to what you're talking about, just getting out of bed at 5:30 to get your butt at school at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, 20 below weather sometimes.
20 below weather. That right there is commitment. You have to have that commitment. You have to do that. And when a match gets tough, if you've gotten up, every day to do that, it means something to you. So you're a lot easier, you're less likely to give up.
Right.
You're on your back. I got to fight off my back. I put in a lot of time for this versus, I just show up for practice. I do my hour of wrestling and then I move on. And we don't have many kids that do that. And, proof is sort of in the pudding the last couple of years. So we've taken some average athletic kids that just plain work hard, and we've gotten them to some pretty high places.
Yeah, we talk about the word grit a lot on this podcast. The wrestling team has so much grit on that team. We were talking about the 60 minutes yesterday of Dan Early, head coach of UConn men's basketball, and we were just talking how he's a psycho, how he coaches his guys the entire year. It's got to be so tough to play for him. I watched Miracle on Ice a few weeks ago. Herb Brooks just put his guys through so much hell for 3 months straight. I don't know how those guys lasted. You're talking about from November to February, you see guys starting to wear off. Does your coaching change from November to then February? You coach the guys a lot. And how do you?
Yeah, so the way we structure our practices is once we hit the end of January into February, we start tailoring back stuff. So when we're getting ready to go to regionals, we're getting ready to go to sectionals, we might be in the practice room after school for 40 minutes. I mean, you're not going to learn anything new at that point. So it's about fine-tuning the things that you have and making them good. And we just don't want to burn kids out. And I see that almost every year of certain kids at certain schools are just killing it throughout the year. And then all of a sudden February hits, and we always talk about, actually, my assistant coach, RJ Dilcher, did a really good job of this year. He always said, we've been working hard all year. All these other kids are going to start working hard right now. Mm-hmm. And you're going to kill your legs. You're going to kill your lungs. You're going to be tired. You're going to get sick. You're going to do those things because you're pushing so hard at the end. We already have that base buildup, so we don't have to do that. And, I think it's, as you go through that last part of the season, I've really been about maintaining what we have, because you're not going to get in better shape the last 2 weeks. You're already there or you're not. So might as well get there in, November and December and have a great year. And maybe you lose a couple matches at the beginning of the year because you're tired or your legs are tired or things like that. I rather much have that than lose in February because you have tired legs.
Yeah, you talked about the middle school a little bit, and I've told Boyce this before too. I said, when you're at the middle school watching practice, you got a gold mine there with the guys you have there, because they attract people because they're people.
Yep.
Derek Miller, high energy guy, straight shooter, not gonna sugarcoat anything for you. Grandpa Mark you talked about, who's kind of the let me soft talk to you a little bit, but hold that line. Ron, who's kind of off the wall, you just never know kind of where he's coming from in a good way. Noah, who's young and okay, I've done it, and I can show you. And then you got Rob, BZ there, doing the bookwork stuff. So that group of people that you have there, connecting with those kids, and I told people this, it just sets you up. Like, it sets you up because the kids are coming in and like, okay, it's like, we're going to give you part of this deep, but you're going to get the main course when you get to high school. This is what we're doing to help set you up. So, kudos to you guys for really being intentional about that. Because I've told people that, I said, when you have that set that way and you can kind of set that up for the high school, the kids are already have structured, so they know coming in. We talked about the discipline. I want to talk about the mentality a little bit, because we've talked before about the mentality and how it can be challenging nowadays with all the other things that are out there, with the opportunities that kids have. You had the first state participant in Ada Miller this year, female. Congratulations on that, and she placed with third,
fifth.
Yeah, that's right, fifth. Yeah, I mean, so it's awesome for her. The first year there. How do you? Jayden asked this a little bit, but how do you build that mentality then? Now that you have maybe not that maybe, but you have two different sexes in the room. And how do you continue? Is there a different way to go about that, or is it the same way? Like, this is who we are, so we're going to do it. How do you bring a female in and say, all right, here we go?
That's been a challenging part because Ada's obviously a very good wrestler, puts a ton of time in. So I was so happy for her to make it to state, and then obviously placed fifth, and she wrestled awesome down at state. Last second victory, like last 5 seconds to win the fifth place medal. So. But you do have to coach a little bit differently when you have, and wrestling's one of those sports where I'll have guys that are high level. Last couple of years, you take, the two Wasley boys, Teague, my son and a couple others, that their goal is to win a state championship. I mean, that's what they're working for every day. And there's others that their goal is to make varsity, yet they're thrown together in the same room. So, a lot of sports, you'll have your C team practicing by themselves, JV, varsity, we're all together.
Right.
Because I want those kids that are on their way up seeing what it takes every day. Yeah, you're going to get your butt kicked by that kid. But maybe week 3, instead of getting taken down 5 times, you get taken down twice. And you start building that mentality of, I can hang with this person.
Right.
I am that good. And that, you go back to that grit.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you got put on your back by one of the best kids in the state, but you got off. Now when we go out in the dual meet and we have to have that kid's probably not going to be as good as who you're wrestling here in the practice room. You can get off your back and save us some team points.
Right.
And the guys are really good too. Obviously they want to kill people in the practice room, but there are times that they understand that they are so much more overpowering than the person they're wrestling, and they'll tail off a little bit. They're not going to let them have anything, but they're going to make them work for it, and that's going to make that kid better too.
Yeah.
And we talked about going into team sectionals this year. We had a lot of young wrestlers, and we didn't want them to quit after, say, regionals was done, or when they knew they weren't wrestling for regionals. We want everybody still in the practice room. And, our push to them was, hey, you're not going to be going to state this year as an individual, but you're now working for next year. You've got 2 solid weeks here to work on stuff, or 3 weeks to work on stuff that you need to work on for next year. And we didn't have anybody drop off in practice this year. And that's, the kids that we got right now, especially the young kids, their love is wrestling. That's part of, what it is too. You have to have a love for the sport that you're doing. And that shows for those kids that are maybe average, maybe even a little bit under average. If they truly love the sport, they're going to excel. You always get those kids that are just freak athletes that are going to do well no matter what they do. But if you can get those kids that aren't quite as athletic, don't quite have the technique, but they love the sport and buy in, they're going to be something as, sophomore, junior, senior year. They're going to have to work hard, and that comes in the practice room and getting your butt kicked a lot. But, we saw it this year with a couple of our freshmen rise up at the end of the year and just have a great end of the season when they had to get sort of thrown into the lineup because of injuries we had.
Yeah. And I think it's great with all your team, the success you've had, not just this year, but, you rewind the last 5, 6, 7 years, you guys have had a lot of success. And being a dad of 2 girls, to see what Ada did this year represent herself, but also young females, because when you're on the mat, there's nothing to hide.
Nope.
You got a singlet on, you got a headgear, and it's mano a mano, and here we go. So for young females, I think it's phenomenal, the message that was sent to saying, okay, I got to go down to Madison and I got to compete on the grandest stage here in the state of Wisconsin in front of all these people, and what am I going to do about it?
Yeah, that explosion of women's wrestling has been absolutely insane the last 5 years. So we're a little bit behind at Central. We don't, we had 2 girls out in high school this year, and I got to give Cadence Trudell a lot of credit because she was one of our managers, and after one of the tournaments, she's like, I can do that. And we said, well, let's get you signed up. And she's like, well, don't tell my mom. I'm going to come in and practice for 2 or 3 days.
Oh, she didn't start on the team. She was a manager.
She was a manager at first. So we got her in the practice room for a couple of days, and then she really liked it. And she went home and told her mom, and mom pulled the trigger and let her wrestle. And I think the rest now is going to be history for her because she loves it. But yeah, you're going out there by yourself, and it you go back to that character, grit, all those things that you want your child to have. You're going to get it right there in wrestling because it's one-on-one out there. And with this explosion of women's sports, hopefully it carries over into St. Croix Central. I know one of the things on our send-off this year when we went to state was, we were talking about Ada, and I just looked at all of the students at SCC and said, hey, this is the fastest growing sport in the United States at the high school level. Any of you can come out. And the best thing about it is it takes every body style. It takes every athleticism that you have. Wrestling truly is, if you show up, you can be there. You don't have to fit a certain mold to wrestle.
Right.
And I think some of the things we talk about is we didn't come here to hide in the crowd, like be uncommon and stuff. So being the first, like, or I think Amethyst was like the first female wrestler, right, at St. Chris?
Well, we've had a couple over the years. We had one actually now I just lost her name because I knew this was going to come up. All the way back at 2002, 2003, we had one for a year that came out, which was really, really odd back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then Maya Olson wrestled for a couple of years.
That's right.
Yep, Maya wrestled through middle school, I believe her freshman year, and then became our manager. She might have wrestled her sophomore year. I can't remember now off the top of my head. But, there's one, if you could fast forward the 6 or 7 years, she would have been an absolute hammer. She loved it, and was really, really good. It's just, it wasn't as popular at the time, and we didn't have the divisions like we have right now.
Right.
Where, I look at some of the schools around us. St. Croix Falls has done a really good job promoting it. They've got a large team. Barron, a couple of schools around us have, 10, 12 girls out on their team right now. So hopefully we start progressing that way. We got a couple in the middle school now coming up. So hopefully, that just sort of breeds more
right
when you see the success that they're having.
Yeah. And I think the mentality and just the confidence and, whether guy, girl, whatever it is, but I just think, together, working together, I always said that is like, we often separate, but it's like, hey, get together and if you can grind out or let's get it, I don't care who's leading it. Kind of like Jayden said, don't sit back and hide. Let's go. Let's get after it. So, yeah, that's awesome. So,
yep, I think, I'll take Cadence this year as an example. She was sort of iffy about coming into the practice room, and the one day Ada wasn't there, and all of a sudden she looked around the room, and it's only guys.
Right.
And it took about 30 seconds, and it was like that whole thing just went out the window, and she was wrestling and never really looked back.
I think when we look at I know close to nothing about wrestling. Not a wrestling. I did it for 2 weeks.
You were out for 2 weeks.
I was out for 2 weeks.
I tried to get him to wear a singlet tonight. He said no.
I could probably do a single on you, Holzer. You think I could?
There were like 2 or 3 that year that were or thought they were basketball players that didn't go out for basketball. We got you to the mat. And it didn't quite work out for you.
It didn't. Not my sport. But I think I didn't know this up until a couple of years. I always just would think, you just like coach, technique and all that stuff. I explain a little bit about the actual strategy that goes into it. I would always hear these guys talk about, hey, I have to flip this weight class. Well, if I go here, then this will happen. Explain the actual strategy. It's a lot that goes into that on your part.
Well, probably this year's a perfect example. We had so many injuries that we had to move weight classes quite often. In our dual meets. Now, tournaments, you just sort of wrestle the weight you're at. So you weigh in at 132, you're wrestling 132 all day. But if you go to a dual meet tournament or we go to a dual meet on a Thursday night, you can move up one weight class. So you're eligible for 2 weight classes. So if I weigh in at 132, I can wrestle 132 and 138. And there is some gamesmanship that goes in there of, okay, if I got a guy and I know they can beat this person, or maybe my backup, I think, can beat their varsity guy, I can now move my varsity guy up, and maybe I get 2 wins out of that. So probably the best example we have of that is we went down to Lodi this year, and we were really decimated by injury. So besides our couple, we didn't have Aiden Ballard, we didn't have Will Schmidt, and we didn't have Mav Kosterzak, who were pretty much out the entire year. But we were also with Leo McKenna, Trenton Holzer, and Brock Swenson. So 3 of our main starters. So technically we got 6 starters that are not in our lineup, and we're wrestling some pretty good teams. So we got 7 or 8 freshmen in our starting lineup. And we moved all over the place. Like, I don't think, other than our heavyweight, I'm not sure if we had a kid wrestle in the same weight class the entire day. And it worked out for us. We ended up going 4-1 on the day. We got the matchups that we wanted. I, in my head, didn't think there was any way we were beating Lodi, who at the time was ranked. And the couple moves that we made ended up working in our favor. We had a couple young kids just totally step up and get some big wins for us. A couple didn't get pinned, which is, awesome, because instead of giving up 6 points, you give up 5 or 4, depending on what the final score was. And, we ended up coming out on top in that match against Lodi, and we just had a great day. And some of the parents sometimes wonder, well, why is my kid wrestling this weight? And they moved up a weight, now they're wrestling a bigger kid. Well, there's some strategy to it. You gotta understand who you're wrestling. Maybe they're better at doing this. Maybe there's a kid that's just really good at not getting pinned. So we're going to throw him out against a really good kid and say, all right, we're going to sacrifice this, and hopefully we don't get pinned. And, at the high school level, we got with our coaching staff up there, Dennis Wasley watches one heck of a lot of film. We call him the wizard. He does a lot for us. He's been around for a long time, and sometimes he doesn't get the credit he deserves. But we'll go into things, and he knows so much about these kids that we're going to wrestle. He goes deep dives into the internet to find matches and find film on people, and it's been obviously a true blessing having him around for like the last 15, almost 20 years.
Right.
What other thing I was going to touch up on, though, that we were talking about before, too, is you have 3 sons that have all wrestled for you. And, we talk about, me and John always talk about, Deion Sanders' prime time. He kind of gets a little, everyone always kind of comes at him a little much. Does he coach his sons differently? He has that, like, list of ranking his sons, too, and all this. Go in on how do you coach your sons differently than other kids? And, like, how's the moment from being a coach to switching, like, a dad moment as well?
Did all 3 make it state?
Jayden did not.
Oh, we had to throw
I had to throw that up there. He's going to be happy.
But he had COVID. He was a COVID year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a COVID year kid.
Yep.
So I would say I've coached them since T-ball, in different sports. So I've had my range of stuff with them. Obviously, coaching 8th grade football, I coached all 3 of them there, and that seemed really easy to me. I don't know why. Wrestling is a completely different beast, and maybe it's because it's my first love. But if I could have 3 kids that are opposite of each other, I do. I know you can't, but they are so different from each other. When I was coaching Jayden, I probably made more mistakes than I did things right. Freshman year was tough, and I didn't think I was doing anything different. But, coming from other parents, coming from my wife, Allie, she said, your voice just sounds different when you yell at him. Because I yell at everybody.
Right.
She says, it just sounds different. I'm like, I do the exact same thing to everybody. And she's like, no, you need to watch the film. And my voice did change a little bit. So I got smart, actually. And I just said, his last couple of years, I said, Derek Miller, you're in the corner. And I didn't sit in his corner. We'd coach in the practice room and everything was fine there. But I think that pressure of being the coach's kid and having to be good, and then, just being an athlete yourself, being on varsity, the pressure you put on yourself, all of that weighs on you if you are the coach's kid. I really think it does. So that was something that I did with Jayden that in the end, junior, senior year worked really well. Teague is a completely different beast. Teague never wanted to be in the limelight. If he could wrestle in a large gymnasium with 10 mats going on, that would be his preference. So that nobody's watching just him, and I never really had a problem coaching him sitting in the chair. And I think it was because I learned from Jayden, and like I said, those mistakes I made, and his 4 years were really good. I got Trenton right now, and Trenton's a completely, he's a different cat. He loves to win. He's about as competitive as a person as I know. And he goes into wrestling, though, completely different than the other 2 because it's not his first love by any means. He loves football more than anything. I'll buck 20 of them. And this was sort of funny. He came from weighing in down at the state tournament this year at 106, and I said, did you ask any of those other 106 pounders how many of them played varsity football? And he sort of smiled and shook his head.
A couple of touchdowns.
Yeah. But he goes into matches just without a care in the world. He just goes and lets it fly. And he doesn't really worry about the outcome. And I look at that and think about if the other 2 could have had that mentality, I think they would have been even better than they were.
Right.
Because you're not worried about if I do this or if I do that. It's just, I'm going out there and wrestling. I don't care who's stepping across the line from me. I'm just going to let it fly.
Right.
And wherever the score lands at the end, it lands. And I think there's something about being carefree like that. I mean, it's not, you're just throwing caution to the wind, but the pressure that you put on yourself is a lot.
Right.
Well, looking at state this year, I saw some pictures, and that moment for you, great with Trenton. What's up with you coaches with like the jacket and jeans? Is that like the new style?
Oh, we just did that this year. This is the first time. So this is our one time that most of us coaches are, I won't say dirt bags, but we don't dress up much. So, the suit jacket comes out, and the suit comes out, state finals, weddings, and funerals. That's it.
Okay.
So normally it's, the nice jacket, the nice pants, nice pair of shoes. And, we brought that and we said, well, if anybody makes it to the finals, this is what we're wearing. And then Trenton was the only one that made it to the finals. And, I really think he's a hicker hillbilly at heart. So we just said, we're going jeans and cowboy boots, rocking the jackets. And I thought it was a nice look.
Yeah, and I didn't hate. I try to hate nothing like that.
There's one thing that, you talk to people. I know it was Brad Wester was talking to his first time down the state tournament. And you talk about the walk, right? The night of the
Walk of Champions.
Yep. Talk about a little bit about that. What what does that mean, and what is that set up for?
I got goosebumps when you said it. Yeah. So I truly believe it is the greatest thing in high school sports. And until somebody actually witnesses it, you can't do it justice in words. So, you got the Kohl Center, which holds 13,000, 13 to 16,000. So it's jam-packed, sold out. The lights come off, the spotlights start flying all around. Some good music starts playing, and all of the finalists from all four divisions, so Division 1, 2, 3, and then the girls, walk around the bottom of the floor, and then they end up standing across from each other. And it's, if you're down in the tunnel, it's one thing to be down there, but if you're up as a fan watching it, it just gives you chills, it gives you goosebumps. I probably tear up once in a while. It's just every year I watch it, I'm amazed.
Yeah. Now, but to back up, you had Trenton this year and Ada.
Yep.
The finals. Last year you had...
No, Ada took fifth, so she wasn't in the finals. So only Trenton this year, but we've been a nice little run.
Yep.
Kids in the finals.
Owen Wasley last year.
Yep. Owen Wasley won it last year. He was a state champ last year, and probably had one of the most dominating years for a St. Clair Central wrestler.
Yep.
People always ask when you've coached a long time, like, who's your best wrestler? What's this? Who's that? And I don't know if there's really a best, because there's so many different things that go into it. But last year, Owen probably put together one of the most dominating years Central kid had. 50 plus wins, no losses, pins his kid in the state finals. Year before he was in the state finals, ended up losing, so he took second. Then his brother was in the state finals twice. So, so we've had, and then Ryan Larson a couple years before that. So we've had a nice run at getting kids in the state finals, bringing out the gold singlet, something, little tradition that we've always done, that you make the state finals, we got a special singlet for you. It's gold, got a little blue on it. But.
Right. That's awesome. It's that the walk of the champions, I think, is like everything we do, like we have a purpose. It's kind of like, how do you define that? How do you figure that out? And for those kids to get the chance to do that walk, I mean, I imagine, even though Trenton is more reserved or more what you call quote unquote hick, is, I'm sure just that walk was like, wow, this is pretty crazy.
Yeah. I don't know how you couldn't get jacked up if you're one walking up there. You did just everything that's going on. And, he wrestled 106. So it's like you do the walk and then instantly you're going out to wrestle. So you got to be pretty jacked up when that goes, where, I haven't had anybody that low in weight wrestle in the final since Adam Delander, 2002, 2003, where most of the guys that we've had that have been in the finals have been bigger guys.
Right.
So one of my favorite things about wrestling has always been the walkout songs, the walkout music you have. First question, did you have one? And second, what has been your favorite or like least favorite memorable ones in years that you've coached?
Well, we did not have walkout songs. Lindy Johnson probably would have killed us if we even brought up the idea. I still tell our kids this. He had this famous line of, don't give anybody an extra reason to beat you up.
Mm-hmm.
So you just went out, you did your job. Walkout songs have been more of a thing. Lately, you have some schools do like the smoke machines, and I mean, it's almost WWE style.
Yeah, they go crazy.
Yep. But, I put RJ in charge of that this year, RJ Dilcher, one of my assistants, and he comes back and he always laughs because some of these kids, I don't think they understand what a walkout song means, because they'll have, like some song that there is no way this gets you jacked up, and they'll play it. And, we try to tell the kids, this is for the crowd just as much as it is for you. Right. And then they finally figured it out. It's funny, our freshmen and sophomores probably did the best job of some classic 80s rock or something like that, or something that just gets you going. And anything with a good bass line is always good.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I want to say it was David Olson had Bad Leroy Brown, which was pretty good.
Cold.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Pete Newsbaum in the morning. He said, "What are you playing in Kids Bop?" Man, this guy plays the craziest music. Like, how do you lift this stuff? But whatever. Oh. Hey, there was a quote. I know we're getting close to the end of the time here. There's a quote I saw, and I thought about you. It says, "What you are not changing, you are choosing. But what you are not changing, you are choosing." In your time, you're 27 years now. How have you seen that quote come more to realization, even though it seems like things are changing more, but more and more kids, as far as they're not changing stuff. They're just kind of like falling into the crowd. I mean, what does that quote mean to you? Again, what you're not changing, you are choosing.
Well, I think if you just go forward doing the same thing over and over again, you're not going to get different results. You have to change things up once in a while. And, I think of Lindy Johnson, my coach, always told us, you either get better or you're getting worse. There's no in between. You can't just keep that steady line. So what are you going to do to get better? Well, back to that, if you're not changing things about what you're doing, like if you're getting beat in this one position, change what you're doing.
Right.
Take a look at it. Why am I getting beat? If you're not seeing results in the weight room, well, what's the program? Are you actually following it? Are you taking, and we've talked about this, on the light days, are you doing those right? Or are you stacking the bar up because you think you need to be a meathead?
Right.
So those little things are going to make a big difference. I think listening to the people around you that have done it is really important. I look at, take Devin, for instance, or Owen, what did they do throughout their careers to make them good? Emulate that. Now, you can't replace it or replicate it 100% because you just can't.
Right.
But take the things that did work with them and put it into your own repertoire and go forward with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought about that quite a bit today, as far as, we have the opportunity to change things. Obviously, it's hard, but people can sit and complain about it and say, "Oh, this will." Well, are you changing it? Are you working to get to make a difference? So yeah.
Well, I think with my coaching staff, I think all of them, especially at the high school level. So I already brought up Dennis, brought up RJ, got Mikey Nielsen, Sean Bird, and then we have many of the middle school coaches come up too.
Right.
And none of them are afraid to come up to me and say, "Hey, I think we need to work on this. I think we need to do this." Yeah, that's why I got you in the room.
Right.
It's not just me in here because, I was an all right high school athlete that didn't wrestle in college.
Right.
I seek to get better every year in things that are going on. I watch a lot of YouTube, watch a lot of wrestling. What are we doing? How can we be better? And if those guys are coming, "Hey, I saw this in a match. I saw this. We've been getting beat in this. I think we need to work on this." All right, I'll put it into the practice plans next week. Everybody's got to have a part in it. And I think wrestling sort of is unique that way too, that, you can take your couple kids and, one guy's working with the heavier weight guys, middle guys, light guys. You go back, Dennis is really good at taking, he'll grab one of those JV kids that can barely tie their shoes and he'll just wrestle with them for a week.
Right.
And now you're getting a one-on-one with a coach for a week straight where, hey, your hands got to go here. Your hips got to be here. Your head's got to be here. And you can just watch those kids take a jump. And I think some of the programs, I look at that have a head coach and barely an assistant coach, and how they do it, I don't know. Because I wish I had 3 or 4 more.
Yeah.
And I'm glad with what we got.
Right. We're talking about for a purpose. We're identifying, like, obviously wrestling is a huge passion of yours. You got 3 phenomenal young men. Jayden has graduated college, is started
his big boy job.
Yeah. Congrats to him. He had a great high school career, got to play at state in football and win there, and then obviously wrestling and stuff. And and Teague now at the lacrosse doing his thing, and Trenton, junior high school, moving into the senior year, correct?
Yep.
So, and then you got Allie, helping support all that piece. What's your purpose now? And how do you identify, like, okay, your purpose? You have teaching, coaching, weight room. I remember you and I've talked before. You said, "I don't know how I'd just be an average teacher, just show up and just teach and walk out of here because that." But how do you what do you identify as your purpose, or what do you look at as your purpose? And it doesn't have to be education, but how do you get to that purpose now, and how do you continue to fulfill that?
I think my biggest purpose is just making youth better, or giving them purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Because between weight room, obviously teaching, which is how you pay the bills,
right?
But you get to school at 6 o'clock, 5:50 in the morning, and there's many times I'm there until 7 o'clock at night, working with kids. And I don't know what I would do without that, because that is my purpose. And I get just as much joy. We've talked about some of the kids that have done really, really well in wrestling, and been really lucky with the amount of kids that we've sent to state champs and kids in the finals and all that stuff. That's wonderful. But I get just as excited about that kid that their goal is to make varsity their senior year, and they make it. I can think of a kid about probably 10, 15 years ago. His goal was to get 20 wins. And at regionals, it was at the time, only the top 2 went to sectionals. It's a third place match. He was 19 and something, and he got his 20th win. He's not going to sectionals. His year's done. His career's done. And he gave me a hug like he just won the state championship, because he hit his goal.
Right.
And that still resonates with me, because getting those kids to that next level, wherever they're starting at, is what I want to do. And I think some of that stems from, because like I said, I was an above average wrestler. I played other sports and wasn't very good, but loved them. I mean, obviously with my size, football didn't quite work out for me. Trent's making it work somehow, but but I loved football. One of the reasons I've coached 8th grade football now for 26 years, it just getting them ready for the high school level. And, even there, it's not about wins and losses. Some parents get devastated when the 8th grade football team loses, but, I want to get them ready so when they walk in their freshman year, they know how to compete in our offense. They know how to compete at their position and do the things that they need to do to make a good football team. And, we had Gary Larson for a long time at the middle school. I've been there forever. And I think, not to pat us two on the backs, but I think that's helped our high school program out immensely, of just having the same 2 people there forever.
Yeah, I don't think so. I know so. And, I think one of the biggest things, and kudos to you for all you've done and continue to do, because you can tell when the kids come back who they look for. And like you said, you get that hug on the last match, or graduation night, when kids are like, hey, this is it and it's done. That's when your purpose is standing out and it's shining the brightest. And so appreciate all you've done, and continue to do the work, because it means a lot. So
yeah, as we wrap it up again, thank you for joining us on the podcast. As a college basketball player over here and a kid who quit wrestling, to have you on outside of our comfort zone a little bit, but it's been fantastic. We're going to have to get Devin and Owen Wadley on here sometime too, and talk about little stories about you as a coach that knows about me.
I don't know if we want to go there.
I was thinking though, is we didn't even mention Victory with Jens, Jens and Derek and those guys. And I mean, you talk a couple of guys who are knowledgeable. I mean, and just crazy. I mean, Jens was a University of Wisconsin wrestler.
Yep, 4-time state champ in high school.
Yeah.
And that's one where he helped me out immensely with Teague. And I think I should have probably brought that up when we talked about the boys. Teague started going down to Victory, and I was hands off. And that made it so nice as a coach that I didn't have to do that. I could just be dad.
Right.
And then going to watch Jayden, play football in Eau Claire, watching Teague wrestle in lacrosse, it's a very different feeling sitting in the stands, just watching and not coaching. It's enjoyable.
Right. Right.
Just sitting back and watching sports for the love of the sport.
Right. Yeah. No, like you said, it's the people you got to surround yourself with are phenomenal people. And so, that takes a leader. And so you're doing that, and it's awesome. Keep it going.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for listening to the podcast once again. Tune in every Wednesday. We're pre-recording a decent amount of podcasts, so they're going to keep coming out every single Wednesday. I'd hope so. Not I hope so, I know so. They'll keep coming out. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Tune in next week. And yeah, it's a fantastic day to be a Panther.